In the beginning of 2023, Vieux and its environs exploded into a series of shocking homicides that alarmed the nation. The government felt the pressure and pushed the Suppression of Escalated Crime Police Powers Act, which granted police sweeping powers to search, arrest, and detain. Last week, the Youth Parliament debated this bill, and surprisingly, the opposition side defeated the government side when the vote was tallied. Former Labour Senator Stanley Felix applauded the members of the Youth Parliament for a powerful and well-considered debate.
The debaters were pretty much on point. The powers given to the police were way far exceeding what they ought to have at their disposal. In fact, they were sweeping powers. And of course, I think this is a piece of legislation. Although I believe it's for a certain period of time, I thought that there were a lot of provisions that offended the Constitution.
The former senator singled out one particular youth parliamentarian for his contribution to the important national debate.
There were some very valid points made by the parliamentarians on both sides, but I was particularly impressed with young Glasgow's presentation. He sought to deal with a lot of the liberties that were somewhat infringed as per the Suppression and Escalated Police Powers Act.
Independent Youth Senator Ethan Carlton Glasgow worried that the Police Powers Act, as written, could open the door to human and civil rights abuses.
The Act does not clearly specify the criteria that determine an escalated crime area, leaving room for arbitrary designation and thus arbitrary imposition of restrictions. Madam President, our laws must be precise, and this discretion afforded to police officers must be clearly defined to protect individuals from potential abuse.
According to Felix, the government was trying to address a national crisis when they proposed the bill and may have had a knee-jerk reaction to stamping out the fires of homicidal violence in Vieux. It is understandable, he says, but it opens the door to unconstitutional abuses of the rights of individuals.
Free movement is one of them, stop and search is one of them. All of those provisions, and the young man did in fact touch on a few sections of the Constitution, if I recall. Section 8 and Section 3, the right to a fair trial, arbitrary search, freedom of assembly.
One provision could be interpreted as unlawfully depriving individuals of their liberty.
There is one provision that stands out to me, the right for the police to detain a person for over 72 hours or 144 hours without having recourse to legal representation. Now that is not exactly in keeping with what the Constitution provides for.
Criminal violence disturbs the peace, provokes more violence, robs the nation of valuable human resources, and retards economic growth. There are no winners. However, the fight against crime requires that the police, the courts, and the rest of the justice system demonstrate their respect for the law, especially the Constitution, if they want others to respect it. If they cannot curb crime without violating the Constitution, they may be fighting for peace, but they are no longer fighting for justice.
I think at the time, and I do understand, that the government was attempting to address crime in a particular part of the country, and we all remember that, but I thought it was somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction, and as such, a lot of the provisions of the constitutions were compromised.
For Choice News Now, I'm Jason Seaflay.